Kadyrov's blood feud, is this a new nightmare for Vladimir Putin? None of us know what forms Putin's nightmares take, but I'd hazard a guess that open conflict between his mafia lieutenants would feature quite prominently in them. Adding the ethnic colour of a blood feud is just an additional theatrical flourish. And this is what happened this week as Kadyrov threatened a blood feud as he claimed a group of Russian lawmakers were planning his assassination. In a video posted on his Telegram channel on October the 9th, Chechen strongman Ramzan Kadyrov accused three Russian lawmakers of plotting to kill him. He warned a blood feud would ensue if they did not prove their innocence. If they don't provide proof to the contrary, I officially declare a blood feud against Barakhoyev, Suleiman Kerimov, and Rizvan Kurbanov. We have witnesses and we know the people they asked about the price of an order for my assassination. Kadyrov claimed to other officials from the North Caucasus Republic. Kadyrov named three lawmakers from neighbouring Dagestan and Ingushetia as potentially being the figures behind the plot. Before we delve into the current accusation, we must review some recent history. There was a violent incident in September at the Moscow headquarters of Wildberries, Russia's largest online retailer, in which two people were killed and several others were arrested. A full Silicon Wafers episode on this will be published next week. In that incident, a fight broke out when Vladislav Bakalchuk, the estranged husband of the company's founder, Tatiana Kim, formerly Bakalchuk, tried to illegally enter the building with his security guards. It is alleged that Bakalchuk attempted to seize the offices with another co-founder, Sergei Anufriev, former chairman and board of directors. Several of those involved came from the North Caucasus, including the two who were killed. Kadyrov previously said he supports Vladislav Bakalchuk's effort to stop the planned merger of Wildberries with advertising operator Rus Outdoor, of which Kerimov is reportedly a top financial backer. The threatened feud was Kadyrov's first public statement since the business dispute turned deadly. In an online post, the Chechen leader wrote, "There are people trying hard to put an ethnic spin on this and who are saying the instigators of the conflict were Kadyrovites. If anyone has any complaints against any Kadyrovites, they should come to me as I am the main Kadyrovite." This is a term he typically uses to describe Chechen soldiers fighting under his command. Kadyrov shared a 9-minute clip of a meeting he had with high-level security officials in which he spoke primarily in Chechen. Anyone who thinks that it is possible to pit entire nations against each other on domestic grounds is deeply mistaken. In this phrase, Kadyrov was referring to allegations that Chechens were behind the Wildberries dispute. "If you have questions for me, then there are no problems. I am waiting," he concluded. The so-called blood feud includes Federation Council member Suleiman Kerimov, a Dagestani billionaire, so someone who is not without means to commission violent acts if he saw fit to do so. Ramzan Kadyrov and Suleiman Kerimov aren't just two businessmen. They can be termed public officials. And for 2 decades, Russia has given the impression that its phase of bandit capitalism was over, a period characterized by frequent public shootouts and the settling of scores with extreme violence. Public office holders couldn't be involved in business conflicts, at least not openly, and it was both technically illegal, but more importantly, was not tolerated. Now the masks have come off. So is this a regression to the chaotic 90s that followed the breakup of the USSR? Kadyrov has vowed to help Vladislav Bakalchuk, the estranged husband of Wildberries CEO Tatiana Kim, who is Russia's wealthiest woman, to return both his wife to him and block the merger of their e-commerce giant with the smaller outdoor advertising group Rus. The takeover of Wildberries itself has the character of an extortion, demanded by powerful individuals, a sort of hostile takeover in the guise of a business merger, but likely at well below the market rate. In short, an offer that the founder could not refuse. The merger may also be part of Russia's wartime redistribution of business assets that has benefited business figures linked to the Kremlin. This is a kind of assets for loyalty scheme and something that Putin may be increasingly dependent upon. The family and business dispute escalated last month when Bakalchuk led a group of men to Wildberries Moscow offices and allegedly tried to force their way into the building. Two security guards who were ethnic Ingush were killed in the shootout, and multiple felony charges, including murder, were filed against Bakalchuk and several other ethnic Chechens involved in the incident. The three lawmakers covered by the threat of the blood feud are originally from Dagestan and Ingushetia, the two Russian republics that neighbor Chechnya. Wildberries and Rus have secured President Vladimir Putin's approval and say the merger will create a new financial, media, and retail behemoth that could rival Western technology giants and boost Russia's economy. Well, this may be a fanciful idea, however, and be far more symptomatic of an economy and business class that are desperately cannibalizing themselves. And this is not the only story featuring Ramzan Kadyrov this week, as he feels the pressure on multiple issues. The head of the North Caucasus Republic condemned a toughening of Russia's migration laws in a social media post on Monday. If migration policy is to be changed, then not in such a disgusting way, when officials frantically pounce on all locals who come to their attention, Kadyrov wrote on Telegram. Inciting hatred towards migrants in society will not do any good, but on the contrary, will make the situation worse, he added, urging Russian officials to abandon medieval approaches to regulating immigration and develop a targeted solution to the issue. Anti-migrant sentiments in Russia reached a fever pitch following the deadly attack on Crocus City Hall concert venue in Moscow's suburb of Krasnogorsk in March this year. That attack was reportedly carried out by citizens of Tajikistan. Sweeping police raids on migrant communities across the country followed the attack. It also led to the self-defeating deportation of tens of thousands of foreign workers on whom the Russian economy is increasingly reliant. Russian lawmakers have introduced sweeping changes to the country's migration regulations in a move that prominent Central Asian analyst Timur Umarov dubbed a process of legalized discrimination. I have a feeling that someone is deliberately pitting Russia against its fraternal neighboring countries, Kadyrov said in the post, referring to Muslim-majority Central Asian countries from which most migrant workers hail. The main thing for policymakers to understand is that there are lawbreakers and law abiders among the immigrants. There are many more of the latter, and this is important, Kadyrov added. Finally, here is a summary of a fascinating article in the Kiev Post on October the 12th by Sahil Menon. It's entitled, "Is the Chechen Tail Wagging the Russian Dog?" In late August, Putin paid an unannounced visit to Chechnya, marking his first trip there since 2011. Was it a coincidence that he headed to Russia's Wild West just weeks after Ukraine made a bold incursion into Kursk? He may have been hesitant to conduct another nationwide mobilization that would risk further alienating the Russian urban population. Predictably, Putin instead turned to an easier option, and that was to turn to Chechnya for additional cannon fodder. The author of the article claims that what sets the TikTok soldiers apart from conventional Russian armed forces is religious inculcation to martyr themselves for a noble cause. That may or may not be true, as Kadyrovites have shown a tendency to avoid the hottest spots in the conflict and to flee from heavy combat situations, as reputedly happened in Kursk. In that recent pep talk to frontline-bound Kadyrovites, Putin hammered home the lie that Russia faces an existential threat to its survival and how absolutely invincible men like them are duty-bound to protect the fatherland. Major General Abti Aludinov, who serves as commander of the Akhmat Battalion, doubled down by reassuring the parents of conscripted Chechen reservists that their children will go to heaven if they perish in Kursk. Since the onset of the special military operation, Putin has pulled several PR stunts to curry favor with the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC. This includes kissing the Quran while in Grozny, levying treason charges against 20-year-old Volgograd resident Nikita Zhuravell for desecrating it, allowing Russian women to sport headscarves in passport photos, throwing his weight behind Palestine amid the ongoing Gaza conflict, not to mention shying away from condemning Kadyrov's teenage son Adam after he was filmed beating up a defenseless Zhuravell at a pre-trial detention facility last autumn. The Kremlin has a vested interest in ensuring the stewardship of Chechnya stays within the tried and tested Kadyrov clan. However ill-prepared the current incumbent's hand-picked successor may be to take over, institutionalizing a hereditary family dictatorship is a means of ensuring Grozny remains blindly allegiant to Moscow and continuing a reliable flow of separatist Chechen volunteers to take up arms in Ukraine. But this is a double-edged sword in stark contrast to the dog whistle politics and scorched earth decimation of Chechnya that followed the 1999 Moscow apartment bombings. Putin demonstrated much greater restraint in the wake of Crocus City Hall massacre and Dagestan terror attacks earlier this year. There are multiple reasons. The dependence on Chechen fighters, as we've mentioned, but also the need for labor to sustain the Russian war economy. But also another pernicious reason. It's why Middle Eastern and North African commentators have overwhelmingly sided with the aggressor, falling for the widespread misconception that Islamophobia is far less acute, if at all prevalent, in Russia relative to the West. This, for anyone who has experienced attitudes amongst ethnic Russians, of course, is laughable. Putin fears whipping up faith-based bigotry will lose face in the eyes of Russia's newfound Islamic allies. The Kremlin has made common cause with Muslim-majority states at the expense of its own Jewish community as well. It is worth recalling that prior to the synagogue shooting in Derbent in June, there was an attempted pogrom against Israeli passengers at Makhachkala Ochash Airport once a local mob caught wind of the incoming flight from Tel Aviv. There were no real consequences imposed by Moscow following this damaging incident. And this is a choice with consequences, with roughly 65,000 dual national citizens who left Russia for Israel in 2022 and now find themselves stuck between a rock and a hard place. And many of them have no intention of returning to a country whose leadership is fanning the flames of anti-Semitism. This policy is hardly popular also with Z bloggers and the patriotic community who are not naturally inclined to favor the Caucasus and Central Asian interests over those of ethnic Russians. Ramzan Kadyrov has made no bones about his sympathy for Hamas, even going so far as to glorify the sadistic atrocities they committed on October the 7th 2023 in Israel and proposing to send troops to defend Palestine when the regional war first broke out. Another hollow threat, no doubt. The Russian government stands to benefit from adopting a similarly pro-Palestinian stance. Their no-limit strategic partner, China, arrived at the same conclusion, albeit for different reasons. Kadyrov's capacity to press gang able-bodied Chechens at scale and without any pushback has created a manpower surplus in Chechnya. He has already dispatched over 47,000 fighters to Ukraine, and here is where the future steps perhaps have come a little clearer. Putin is calling in favors to patch together his empire and fuel his wars. This is not just in Ukraine, but also in the attempts to hold together the full and quasi-autocracies where Moscow tries to project power and control. in Belarus, in Moldova's Transnistria, and in Georgia even. Putin will likely call upon Kadyrov and Alvadinov to mobilize peacekeepers to neighboring Georgia should the ruling Georgian Dream Party be voted back into office, or even in the less likely scenario that they lose their attempt to be elected forever and abolish democracy in Georgia. The last thing he wants is a Maidan revolution in the South Caucasus. And ultimately, Kadyrov is fully aware of the extent to which the tables have turned and power has shifted towards him. Sooner or later, Kadyrov will demand that Putin reassesses their existing social and business contract. Such a reset in business relations, that negotiation did not go in Prigozhin's favor last year. So it'll be interesting to see if Kadyrov manages to pull it off.